Imagine a knock at your door, 3 long, silent years after your father vanished without a trace. You open it, and there it is, a letter in his unmistakable handwriting. Your heart explodes with a wild, desperate hope. But then my billionaire grandfather looked at it, and with a single chilling whisper, he showed me the truth that would unravel everything. My name is Amada Montgomery, and at 29, I had long given up on ever hearing from my father again. 3 years of absolute silence had hardened me, forcing me to build a wall around that part of my heart. Then, out of nowhere last Tuesday, an envelope appeared, addressed in that familiar script. My heart didn't just burst with joy. It shattered the fragile peace I'd painstakingly constructed. I immediately called my grandfather, William, eager to share this unbelievable news. His response wasn't joy, though. It was a cold demand. Bring it to me. Now. As I slid the fragile letter across his gleaming mahogany desk, his brow furrowed. Look closer, he commanded. The next few moments, as I looked, changed everything I thought I knew. For years, I'd carved out a good life in Boston. I was a journalist, living my dream of uncovering truth and telling important stories for a major newspaper. My downtown apartment, small as it was, had character and a view that soothed my soul. I'd earned respect, especially for my exposés on financial crimes and corporate fraud. The irony wasn't lost on me. My career was a direct reflection of my own family's tangled drama. My grandfather, William Montgomery, had raised me since I was 12. A self-made billionaire, his empire spanned real estate, technology, manufacturing. He could have spoiled me rotten, but he chose not to. Money is a tool, Amada, he'd often say, not a substitute for character. I worked summer jobs, applied for scholarships, made my own way. He was my rock, my constant. My father, Jackson, was anything but. His struggle with alcohol had always been a shadow over our lives, ultimately leading to my parents' divorce when I was 8. When Mom passed away from cancer at 12, I went to live with Grandpa. Dad would drift in and out, disappearing for months, only to reappear with grand promises that inevitably crumbled. The tension between him and Grandpa was a palpable thing. Dad resented Grandpa's success, feeling perpetually overshadowed. His business ventures failed, often because he'd simply abandoned them. Grandpa would offer advice, Dad would ignore it, and then, predictably, ask for money. I built everything from nothing, Grandpa would say, exasperated. Jackson just refuses to put in the work. The final blow landed 3 years ago, on my 26th birthday. Dad arrived late to my dinner, already slightly drunk. He immediately started a fight with Grandpa. You think your money makes you God? He shouted across the private dining room. You use it to control everyone, especially Amada. Grandpa's voice was measured, but laced with ice. I've done nothing but try to help you. And I've been there for Amada when you couldn't be bothered. I'm her father. Dad slammed his fist on the table. But you've turned her against me with your mansions and your connections. How am I supposed to compete? I tried to intervene. This is my birthday. I pleaded. Can we please just have one peaceful family dinner? But he was beyond reasoning. He threw down his napkin, stood up. I'm done, he declared. Done with your judgment, your condescension, this whole toxic situation. He turned to me, tears in his eyes. Amada, when you're ready to have a relationship with me that doesn't involve him controlling everything, you know how to reach me. And then he walked out. I ran after him, calling his name in the parking lot. He got into his car without a backward glance and drove away. That was the last time I saw him. The next day, his phone was disconnected. His apartment was empty. I sent emails, messages, hired a service to find him, even mailed letters to a new address. Nothing. Just silence. The first year was a blur of grief, anger, and confusion. How could he just cut me off? How could he disappear without even giving me a choice? I buried myself in work, breaking a major story that earned me a promotion. By the second year, I had a ritual, writing him letters I never sent, keeping them in a box under my bed. Dozens of updates, questions, pleas. Sometimes I dream he came back, only to wake to his agonizing absence. In the third year, I finally reached a semblance of acceptance. Dad had made his choice. I couldn't force him to be in my life. I focused on my friends, my career, and my weekly dinners with Grandpa, who, despite his demanding empire, remained my unwavering support. Which brings us back to that Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago when my world tilted. It began like any other day. Run, shower, coffee. I was knee-deep in corporate tax evasion research when my doorbell rang. The delivery person handed me a small package. No return address, just my name and address, in a handwriting I knew better than my own. My father's. I stood there, frozen, the package heavy in my trembling hands. The delivery person vanished, leaving me alone with this unexpected ghost from my past. I closed the door, walked to the kitchen counter, my mind racing. The brown paper was slightly wrinkled, as if it had been carried for a long time. The slanted script, the same as on birthday cards and lunchbox notes from childhood. I traced a fingertip over the blue ink, feeling the slight indentation. For 3 minutes, I just stared. What could he possibly say after all this time? Was he sick, moving further away? Or was this finally the apology, the reconnection I'd yearned for? I took a deep breath and carefully unwrapped it. Inside, a plain white envelope, a faded family photo from a fishing trip when I was 9, and a small wooden bird carving. The bird was exquisite, detailed work, his handiwork. He'd always been so skilled with wood. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Dear Amada, I know it's been too long. Not a day has passed that I haven't thought of you. I've been working on myself and have made some important connections. There's a business opportunity that could change everything for us. I want to make things right. I'll be in touch again soon with more details. This time will be different. I promise. The bird represents freedom from a past. Keep it close. Love always, Dad. It was short, vague, and frustratingly light on details. My heart fluttered with hope, yet anger simmered beneath. What business opportunity? Why now? Despite the questions, hope surged. He'd thought of me every day. He wanted to make things right. I picked up the wooden bird, admiring its movement. It felt significant, a message beyond words. The photo showed us three, Dad, Grandpa, and me, grinning wildly, sandwiched between the two men who had shaped my life. My weekly call with Grandpa was scheduled for that evening, but I couldn't wait. I dialed his number. His assistant put me through instantly, a privilege I rarely used. Amada, is everything all right? His voice was concerned. Unscheduled calls usually meant trouble. Grandpa, I got a letter from Dad. I blurted, my voice cracking with emotion. A long pause. What did it say? He finally asked, his tone carefully measured. I read him the message word for word. I see, he said when I finished. You're sure it's from your father? Of course I am. I know his handwriting. Another long pause. I think you should bring the letter here, right away, if you can. Something in his voice made my stomach drop. Is something wrong? I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you come now? I agreed, the 30-minute drive to his estate feeling endless. The security gate recognized my car, opening silently. Martha, the housekeeper, greeted me with a warm hug. He's in his study. Canceled his afternoon meetings after your call. That surprised me. Grandpa William rarely rescheduled business for personal matters. I found him by the window, looking out at the manicured gardens. At 72, he still stood tall, imposing. He turned as I entered, concern etched deep in the lines around his eyes. Let me see it, he said, without preamble. I handed him the letter, the photo, the carving. He examined each one, his expression darkening. What is it? I asked, anxiety clawing at my throat. You're scaring me, Grandpa. He picked up the letter and handed it back to me. Look closer at the handwriting, Amada. Really look. I studied the familiar slant, the curves of the L's and E's. And then, with Grandpa's prompting, I started seeing it. Subtle differences I'd missed in my emotional haze. The pressure on certain downstrokes was heavier than Dad's usual. The spacing between words was just a touch wider. The signature, though similar, lacked the distinctive hook on the final N of Jackson. I don't understand, I whispered, a cold dread spreading. I received a letter last week, Grandpa said quietly. Allegedly from your father, asking for money for a business venture. You did? Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure it was genuine, and I didn't want to upset you unnecessarily. He opened a drawer and pulled out another envelope. Compare them. The second letter was similar in tone, but more specific. A real estate development needing an initial investment. It requested $200,000 to be wired. Side by side, the discrepancies in handwriting were undeniable. Good imitations, yes, but not my father's. Someone is pretending to be Dad. I breathed, feeling sick. But who would do that? And why? That's what we need to find out, Grandpa said grimly. Someone is clearly trying to use your father's identity to scam money from us. The question is, where is your real father? And does he know about this? My mind raced. A cruel prank? Or something far more sinister? If these weren't from him, where was he? Was he safe? The 3 years of silence suddenly took on a much darker meaning. I thought he was just angry and stubborn, I said, my voice breaking. What if something happened to him? Grandpa put a hand on my shoulder. Let's not jump to conclusions. First, we need to verify his whereabouts and whether he knows about these letters. I nodded, trying to gather my thoughts. How do we do that? I know someone who can help us, he replied. A private investigator I've used for business matters. Very discreet, very thorough. I'll call him right now. As Grandpa made the call, I sank into a leather chair, staring at the fake letter and the wooden bird. If this wasn't from my father, who carved the bird? Was it bought? And the photograph, it was absolutely genuine. A copy of one that had hung in his old apartment. Whoever was doing this knew our family. They had access to personal items, or at least images of them. This wasn't a random scam. This was targeted, personal, and suddenly terrifying. By the way, if you're still with me, navigating this chilling mystery, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories are coming, and you won't want to miss them. Thomas Keller, the private investigator, arrived within the hour. Not the hard-boiled type I imagined, but a soft-spoken man in his 50s with kind eyes behind rimless glasses. He listened intently, taking notes, examining the letters without touching them. First thing, we verify Mr. Jackson Montgomery's current whereabouts, he said. When was the last confirmed location? I explained about his disappearance, my failed attempts. I did manage to find an address for him about 2 years ago. I added, in Durango, Colorado. I sent letters there, but no response. Keller nodded. That's a starting point. He asked for a recent photo, habits, friends, anything to track him. Grandpa, ever efficient, handed him a file already prepared. Dad's social security number, date of birth, last known addresses, and photos. I wasn't surprised. Preparedness was his superpower. One more thing, Keller said. Any reason someone would specifically target your family for a scam, beyond the obvious financial motivation? Grandpa and I exchanged glances. I've made my share of business rivals, Grandpa admitted, and there have been threats, though nothing recently. My job involves investigating financial crimes. I added, I've written exposés on several major corporations and individuals. It's possible this could be related to my work. Keller noted our suggestions. I'll look into all angles. For now, if any more communications arrive, allegedly from Jackson, don't respond. Contact me immediately. The next 2 days crawled. I tried to work, but my phone felt like a ticking bomb. I kept the wooden bird on my desk, turning it over, searching for clues. Keller called on the third day. I've confirmed the address in Durango was where your father was living until recently, he reported. However, neighbors say he moved out approximately 3 weeks ago. Did they say where he went? I asked, my voice tight. No specific destination, but several neighbors mentioned he left with a business associate. An older man with glasses and a beard. They seemed to be in a hurry. Did this man have a name? They knew him only as Phil or Phillips. He had been visiting frequently in the weeks before they left. I relayed this to Grandpa over dinner that evening. Phillips, he repeated, frowning. That name doesn't ring any bells in connection to Jackson. Keller's checking for a forwarding address, or if his mail is being held, I said, pushing my barely touched salmon. He's also looking into Dad's bank records and phone activity. Good, Grandpa nodded. We need to know if he's involved in this scheme or a victim of it. You think Dad might be behind the fake letters? I asked, stung by the suggestion. Grandpa sighed. I don't want to believe it, Amada, but we can't ignore the possibility. Your father has asked for money under false pretenses before. Not like this, I insisted. He wouldn't forge letters and use old family photos to manipulate me. Before Grandpa could respond, my phone rang. A blocked number. I answered. Silence, then heavy breathing. Hello. I said repeatedly. Who is this? Dad, is that you? After about 30 seconds, the caller hung up. I immediately called Keller. He promised to try tracking the number, though he wasn't optimistic. Unable to sleep, I picked up the wooden bird again. As I turned it under the lamplight, I noticed something I'd missed before. On the underside of one wing, barely visible, were tiny marks. I grabbed a magnifying glass. Letters and numbers, etched in minute detail. SP 34 newtons, 118 watts. Partial coordinates. The next morning, I showed my discovery to both Grandpa and Keller. Good catch, Keller said. These could be pointing to a specific location. I'll check what's at or near these coordinates. That afternoon, Keller called with another. Update. I've identified the man your father was seen with. His full name is Sean Phillips, and he has quite a record. Multiple fraud convictions, including investment scams targeting the elderly. He was released from prison 8 months ago. My heart sank. This didn't sound good for my father. Is he known for violent crimes? I asked, dreading the answer. Not directly, but he has associated with people who are. The concerning part is that one of his known tactics is to find vulnerable people with connections to wealth, befriend them, and use them to reach their wealthy contacts. You think he's using my father to get to my grandfather? I said, the pieces starting to click into place. It's a strong possibility. The question is whether your father is a willing participant or being coerced. Grandpa was convinced it was the former, but I couldn't accept it. The father I knew had flaws, yes, but he wouldn't use me like this. We need to consider that your father might be in danger, Keller said during our next meeting. If he initially agreed to participate in a scam, but then changed his mind, these people might be forcing his compliance. Then we need to find him, I insisted, before something worse happens. Keller nodded. I've traced the coordinates from the bird carving. They point to an area near Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Not much there except an old mining site and some vacation cabins. Could he be held there? I asked. Possibly. I'm working with a contact in Colorado to check it out discreetly. We don't want to alert anyone if your father is indeed being held against his will. As we discussed, next steps, Grandpa's security system alerted us to a delivery. Another package, this time addressed to him. Inside was another letter, supposedly from my father, explicitly asking for $2 million for a guaranteed investment opportunity to make up for lost time and rebuild our family. It instructed Grandpa to wire the money to an offshore account within 3 days. This is getting serious, Grandpa said, his face grim. I think we need to involve the police. Keller raised a hand. Let me trace where this package came from first. If your son is being held somewhere, a police investigation might spook his captors. Using his contacts, Keller discovered the package had been sent from a shipping store in downtown Boston. Security footage showed a young man in a baseball cap, a hired courier. This tells us something important, Keller surmised. Whoever is behind this is operating at least partly from Boston, not just Colorado. Later that day, Keller called with an unexpected breakthrough. I found your father's laptop, he announced. It was in a storage unit attached to his former apartment in Durango. The manager held it when your father left without proper notice. What's on it? I asked eagerly. It's password protected, but my tech specialist is working on it. If we can access it, it might tell us what your father was involved in before he disappeared. The next morning, Keller arrived at my apartment with a laptop and his tech specialist, a young woman named Riley. Within an hour, she had bypassed the password. What we discovered shocked all of us to our core. My father had been compiling extensive research on a company called NextGen Investments, documenting what appeared to be a sophisticated fraud operation. Screenshots of transactions, recorded phone conversations, a detailed timeline. This looks like he was building a case, I said, scrolling through the files. Like an investigation. NextGen Investments, Grandpa muttered, his eyes narrowing. That's one of Arthur Blackwood's companies. Arthur Blackwood? Keller asked. My chief business rival for the past 20 years, Grandpa explained. We've had numerous legal battles. Further searching revealed emails between my father and an FBI agent named Diana Foster. In these exchanges, my father agreed to act as a confidential informant in an investigation into NextGen Investments and Arthur Blackwood. The last email, dated just before his disappearance from Durango, sent a cold shiver down my spine. Jackson, your information has been invaluable, but we have reason to believe your cover may be compromised. Discontinue all contact with target subjects immediately. Meet at designated location B tomorrow at 0900 for extraction. Foster. Oh my God, I whispered. Dad was working undercover for the FBI. And it looks like his cover was blown, Keller added grimly. This changes everything. The revelation that my father had been working with the FBI stunned us. For 3 years, we had believed he abandoned us out of anger. In reality, he may have been protecting us by keeping his distance. We need to contact this FBI agent immediately, I insisted, pointing to Diana Foster's email address. Keller nodded. I'll reach out through proper channels. If your father was indeed a confidential informant, they'll want to know about these fraudulent letters and the potential threat to him. While Keller worked his connections, I dove deeper into Dad's laptop. The more I discovered, the more amazed I became. He had meticulously documented financial transactions, suggesting NextGen Investments was a massive Ponzi scheme. There was evidence linking Arthur Blackwood to offshore accounts, tax evasion, even bribery. Dad was thorough, I murmured. These are the kind of receipts journalists dream of finding. But the most shocking discovery came in a hidden folder labeled Family. Inside were dozens of documents related to Grandpa William's business empire, focusing specifically on connections between his companies and Blackwood's interests. Transaction records, meeting minutes, contracts going back 15 years. My heart raced as I opened a voice memo dated just before Dad's disappearance. His voice filled the room, tired but determined. Diana, I confirmed the connection. The shell company that received the kickbacks from NextGen's municipal contracts traces back to William Montgomery Enterprises through 3 layers of subsidiaries. I don't believe William is directly involved. This has Blackwood's fingerprints all over it. He's been setting my father-in-law up for years, making it look like William is complicit in the fraud. I need to warn him, but I can't risk contact until we have everything secured. The evidence is in the encrypted files I sent yesterday. The password is Amada's birthday, month, day, year, no spaces. I sat back, stunned. Dad hadn't just been investigating Blackwood. He'd discovered Blackwood was trying to implicate my grandfather in his illegal activities. He'd been working to protect our family all along. I turned to Grandpa, who had been listening over my shoulder. His face had gone utterly pale. William, I said quietly, using his first name, did you know about any of this? He sank heavily into a chair. I knew Blackwood was ruthless, but this... No, I had no idea he was trying to set me up. He looked up, his eyes troubled. Jackson was trying to protect me, and I spent 3 years thinking the worst of him. Before we could process this, Keller returned. I've made contact with Agent Foster. She's on her way here now, along with her team. They've been looking for Jackson for weeks. Agent Foster arrived within the hour. A no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and a brisk manner. She confirmed everything. My father had become an FBI informant after accidentally discovering NextGen's fraud while doing carpentry work at their Colorado offices. When he realized the connection to Blackwood and the potential threat to Grandpa, he dove deeper, becoming a key asset. We had an extraction plan in place when he warned us his cover was blown, Foster explained. But he never made it to the meeting point. We've been searching for him since, fearing the worst. And you never thought to contact his family? I asked, my anger flaring. We had no confirmation of foul play, and Jackson was explicit about keeping his family, especially you, out of it, she replied evenly. He believed involving you would put you at risk. Based on these fraudulent letters, it seems he was right to be concerned. As Foster spoke, another package was delivered to my apartment. This one contained a USB drive and a note. $2 million. Instructions on the drive. 3 days or Jackson Montgomery dies. The FBI immediately took the drive. It contained a video. My blood ran cold. My father, thin and exhausted, reading a statement demanding Grandpa pay. No visible injuries, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. They're holding him somewhere in Boston, Foster concluded. Background noise suggests an industrial area near water. We're working to identify the specific location. What about the money? Grandpa asked. I'll pay it immediately if it will bring him home safely. Foster shook her head. We strongly advise against that. Once they have the money, they have no incentive to keep Jackson alive. We need to locate him first. And if you can't, I challenged. If 3 days pass and we find nothing, then we'll discuss contingency plans, she said firmly. But my team is good at what we do, and now that we know Blackwood is likely behind this, we have more angles to pursue. The FBI set up surveillance at my apartment and Grandpa's estate. Agents monitored Blackwood's known associates. That night, I tried and failed to sleep. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, an FBI agent listening in. Amada Montgomery, a distorted voice asked. Yes, I replied, forcing my voice steady. We know the FBI is involved now. That changes the terms. $5 million, not 2, and you'll make the delivery personally, alone, or your father dies. I need proof he's still alive. I demanded. A pause. Then, my father's voice, raw with desperation. Amada, don't do what they ask. It's a trap. Blackwood is trying to... His voice was cut off by what sounded like a slap. The distorted voice returned. Tomorrow noon. Instructions will follow. Come alone, or he dies. The call ended. I was shaking. My father's warning echoed. He mentioned Blackwood by name. I told Foster when she arrived. They'll know he exposed them, which makes this more dangerous, she agreed. They have less reason to keep him alive. So what's the plan? I asked. I'm not just going to sit here and do nothing. Foster regarded me thoughtfully. We need to move faster than they expect. I think it's time to bring the fight to Blackwood directly. By dawn, the FBI had warrants for Blackwood's offices and home. What they found at his waterfront mansion was damning. Financial records confirming Dad's findings, plus evidence linking Blackwood to Sean Phillips and the fraudulent letters. But no sign of my father. As noon approached, I received a text, an address in South Boston, instructions to bring proof of the wire transfer to an offshore account. It's an abandoned office building near the harbor, Foster said, showing me satellite images. We got a team in position. We'll wire the building for sound and video before you arrive. I thought you said we shouldn't pay the ransom. Grandpa objected. We're not, Foster explained. We're setting up a fake transfer confirmation that will pass initial scrutiny. It's about buying time while our other teams search Blackwood's properties. As the FBI prepared, Keller pulled me aside. While they focus on Blackwood, I've been looking at Phillips. He owns a storage facility across town under another name. It's not on the FBI's radar, but my sources suggest unusual activity there. You think that's where they might be holding my father? I asked. Keller nodded. It's worth checking out. I could go now while the FBI is focused on a meeting. I made a split-second decision. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not, he objected. It's too dangerous. My father risked everything to protect our family, I insisted. I'm not sitting on the sidelines now. Besides, I'm a journalist. I know how to stay out of sight while gathering information. After some argument, Keller reluctantly agreed on condition that we only conduct reconnaissance and call for backup. We slipped away, driving to a rundown industrial park 30 minutes from downtown. The storage facility looked abandoned, but Keller pointed out new security cameras, fresh tire tracks. Someone's invested in security recently, he noted. We circled the building, staying out of camera view, until we found a service entrance with a keypad lock. Through a small window, I saw a corridor lit by fluorescent lights. This place isn't abandoned, I whispered. We need to get inside. I might be able to bypass this, but it will take time, and if there's an alarm, before he could finish, the door opened. A man stepped out, lighting a cigarette, talking on a phone. Yeah, Blackwood says we move him tonight after the girl delivers the money. Too many feds sniffing around. Know the offshore site. Yeah, I know it's a one-way trip for him, but that's not our problem. My blood ran cold. They were going to kill my father. When a man went back inside, Keller immediately called Agent Foster. She redirected a tactical team to our location, instructing us to stay hidden. We watched as FBI vehicles converged silently. The operation was swift, precise. Agents breached multiple entrances. Within minutes, the all-clear signal. Foster herself came to get us. "We found him," she said, a mixture of relief and concern on her face. "He's alive, but he needs medical attention." They brought my father out on a stretcher. He was pale, thin, bruises on his face, a bandaged arm, but conscious. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Amada," he whispered as I rushed to his side. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you involved in this." "It's okay, Dad," I choked out, gripping his hand. "We know everything. You were protecting us." As the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance, he clutched my hand tighter. "William," he asked urgently, "is he safe?" "He's fine," I assured him. "He's with the FBI. We've been looking for you together." Relief washed over his face. Tell him Blackwood was setting him up for years. The evidence is all in my files. He needs to know it wasn't my imagination or jealousy. It was real." "He already knows, Dad," I said. "We found your research. You did it. You protected the family." As the ambulance doors closed, Agent Foster approached me. "We've arrested 4 men here, including Sean Phillips. Arthur Blackwood was taken into custody at his office 20 minutes ago. Your father's ordeal is over, and thanks to his work, we've uncovered one of the largest financial fraud schemes in the state's history." I felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief that Dad was safe, immense pride in what he'd accomplished, lingering anger over the 3 years of silence, but mostly a profound sense that a new chapter was beginning. One that would require healing and rebuilding, but held the promise of truth and reconciliation. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of hospital rooms, FBI debriefings, and news. Reports about Blackwood's arrest. Dad was treated for malnutrition, dehydration, and a poorly set broken arm. Doctors assured us he'd recover physically, but the emotional trauma would take longer. I split my time between the hospital and helping Agent Foster navigate Dad's mountain of evidence. As a journalist, I had a knack for organizing information. "Your father was meticulous," Foster commented. "He documented everything and created fail-safes to ensure the evidence would surface, even if something happened to him." "That sounds like Dad," I said with a sad smile. "When he commits to something, he gives it everything." Foster gave me a thoughtful look. We offered him witness protection at the beginning. He refused, said he needed to stay connected to the real world to be effective and to keep an eye on us from a distance. I realized, even when we thought he'd abandoned us, he was watching over us. While Dad recovered, Grandpa and I had intense conversations. The FBI advised that even with Blackwood and his accomplices in custody, other associates might be at large. "They want to put us in protective custody until the trial," Grandpa explained during one of our late-night coffees in the waiting room. "Move us to a safe location, provide security." I shook my head firmly. "I'm not hiding." Dad spent 3 years sacrificing his relationship with us to build this case. If we run and hide now, what was it all for? "It's not about hiding, Amada. It's about being sensible." "No, it's about taking control of the situation," I insisted. "These people operated by keeping us in the dark, manipulating us through fear and uncertainty. I'm done with that." I outlined my alternative plan. Instead of passive protection, we'd set a trap. I'd use my journalism contacts to plan a story about new evidence in the Blackwood case, held in a secure location. Then, with the FBI's help, we'd monitor who came looking for it. "It's too risky," Grandpa objected. "Let the professionals handle this." "The professionals have been working this case for 3 years and still didn't prevent Dad from being kidnapped," I pointed out. "Besides, I'm not suggesting we do this alone. We'll work with Foster's team every step of the way." After much debate, and to my surprise, Foster actually supported my plan with modifications. She recognized the value of proactive measures and that my media connections could create a convincing story to flush out any remaining conspirators. "But you will follow our protocols exactly," she insisted. "No improvising, no journalist heroics." I agreed, though I mentally crossed my fingers about the no improvising part. My experience taught me some situations required quick thinking. The story went live on a Tuesday morning. A carefully crafted piece by a colleague, suggesting Jackson Montgomery had secured insurance documents implicating additional high-level figures in Blackwood's scheme. Documents allegedly held in an attorney's office. By that afternoon, surveillance had identified two suspicious individuals conducting reconnaissance around the named law office. One was a former NextGen executive, the other a private security contractor with ties to Blackwood. They took the bait, Foster confirmed. Now we wait. We didn't wait long. That night, monitoring devices recorded an attempted break-in. FBI agents arrested both men, plus a third accomplice. Under questioning, the former executive revealed a contingency plan. If Blackwood was arrested, a second operation, run by Blackwood's silent partner, was prepared to eliminate witnesses and destroy evidence, with my father at the top of the list, followed by Grandpa and me. Who is this partner? Foster demanded. The man shook his head. I don't know. Blackwood only ever referred to him as the investor. All I know is he has significant political connections and a lot to lose if the full extent of the scheme becomes public. This revelation added urgency. If a powerful, unknown figure was orchestrating a cleanup, none of us were safe yet. Dad was released from the hospital the next day, still weak but insistent on being part of the solution. He moved into Grandpa's estate, where security had been significantly enhanced. Seeing the two of them together, awkwardly attempting to rebuild their relationship while both worried about our safety, would have been almost comical under different circumstances. We need to draw out this investor, Dad said during a strategy session in Grandpa's study. He's the key to ending this for good. How do you propose we do that? Grandpa asked. Though still reserved, he had developed a new respect for his son's strategic thinking. Dad turned to me. We use Amada's original plan, but bigger. Instead of hinting at evidence, we announced that I'm holding a press conference in 3 days to reveal everything, including the identity of Blackwood's silent partner. Foster, who had joined us, looked skeptical. That puts an enormous target on your back. I've had one there for 3 years, Dad replied grimly. At least this time, I'll be facing it with my family and the FBI, not alone in some cabin in Colorado. After hours of debate, we refined the plan. I would use my media contacts to generate maximum publicity, pressuring the investor. Grandpa, despite his initial reservations, proved invaluable, creating a convincing security perimeter with multiple layers of surveillance. If someone wants to get at Jackson before the press conference, they'll have to go through these checkpoints, he explained, pointing to a map. Each one gives us another opportunity to identify them. For 2 days, we maintained the charade. Dad gave brief statements to selected reporters about naming names. I wrote an accompanying piece for my newspaper, implying Dad had documented connections between Blackwood's operation and prominent political figures. On the eve of the press conference, our operation paid off. Security cameras captured a black SUV approaching the service entrance. When guards tried to stop it, the vehicle accelerated, crashing through the gate. 4 armed men emerged, heading toward the main house. The FBI tactical team, hidden on the grounds, immediately responded, capturing 2. The other 2 barricaded themselves in the greenhouse. Surrender now, Foster called through a megaphone. The building is surrounded. Instead of surrendering, one man called a number on his cell phone. Moments later, we intercepted a call to the greenhouse from a burner phone in downtown Boston. What's happening? A voice demanded. Is it done? We're pinned down, the intruder responded. 2 men down, FBI everywhere. There is no extraction, the voice replied, coldly. Complete the job or don't bother coming back. The callous response seemed to break something in the trapped men. They surrendered 5 minutes later, agreeing to full cooperation in exchange for protection from the investor. Their leader, a former military contractor named Marcus Reed, provided the final piece of the puzzle. The investor was Gerald Winters, a state senator who had used his political influence to facilitate Blackwood's fraudulent investments and received millions in kickbacks. With this information, The FBI obtained warrants for Winters' arrest and the seizure of his financial records. By morning, the senator was in custody, and the press conference had transformed from a trap into an actual announcement of the successful conclusion of the case. Standing beside my father as he addressed the media, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Despite everything he had endured, he spoke with dignity and clarity, explaining his role without seeking glory or placing blame. When asked about the 3 years he spent away, he simply said, "I did what I thought was necessary to protect the people I love. The cost was high, but I would pay it again." Afterward, as we walked back to the car, I slipped my hand into his, something I hadn't done since I was a little girl. "You did it, Dad," I said softly. "It's really over." He squeezed my hand, his eyes glistening. "Not over," he corrected gently. "Just beginning. The hard part comes next. Rebuilding what was broken." Looking ahead, I saw Grandpa waiting by the car, his expression a complex mixture of emotions. The road to healing our family would indeed be challenging, but for the first time in years, I believed we would travel it together. The days following the arrest of Senator Winters and the dismantling of the fraud network should have been purely celebratory. The FBI praised Dad's courage. The media hailed him a hero, and Grandpa's business reputation was not only preserved but enhanced. Yet, inside our family, the atmosphere remained tense. 3 years of silence had created wounds that acknowledgement of good intentions couldn't immediately heal. Dad moved into Grandpa's guest house, mirroring the emotional gap between us. Our first family dinner was painfully stilted. "The doctors say I should regain full use of my arm in a few months," Dad offered, breaking one of many silences. Grandpa nodded stiffly. "I've arranged for the best physical therapist in Boston." "Thank you, William. That's very generous." More silence. "How much do you remember?" I finally asked about his captivity. Dad's fort paused. "Most of it." They wanted information. When I wouldn't tell them, they tried. He trailed off, then continued more firmly. They tried various methods of persuasion. I reached across the table and touched his hand. "I'm sorry you went through that alone." "I wasn't alone." "Not really," he replied, meeting my eyes. "Thinking of you, and even your stubborn grandfather here, kept me going. I knew if I could just hold out, the evidence would come to light." "You could have trusted us with the truth," Grandpa said, a hint of old resentment in his voice. "Instead of disappearing." Dad set down his fork. "Blackwood had infiltrated your company, William. He had people watching Amada. If I had stayed in contact, it would have led them straight to the evidence and put you both at risk. So, you made that decision for all of us." Grandpa countered. "Without discussion, without consent." "Yes, I did," Dad acknowledged. "And I would do it again to protect you both. I'm not asking for gratitude, but I had hoped for some understanding." The tension was unbearable. I suggested dessert in the living room, but it made little difference. By 9, Dad excused himself. "That went well," I said sarcastically to Grandpa. "It will take time, Amada. 3 years of believing one thing, only to discover the complete opposite. It's a significant adjustment, but we need to try harder. Dad nearly died protecting this family." Grandpa nodded reluctantly. "I've arranged for Dr. Melissa Jang to meet with us tomorrow." "Family therapy?" I raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like you." "Yes, well," he cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Recent events have suggested that my usual approaches to family dynamics might benefit from professional guidance." I had a smile. For William Montgomery to admit he needed help was unprecedented. Dr. Jang was exactly what we needed. Calm, insightful. She created a space for difficult truths. In our first session, she asked us to express what we'd felt during the separation. I went first, describing my journey from confusion to hurt, anger, then resignation. Dad listened, tears in his eyes. "I wrote you letters," I told him. "Dozens. In a box under my bed. I wrote to you too," he admitted quietly. "Letters I could never send. In a notebook in Colorado." I asked Agent Foster to retrieve it. When it was Dad's turn, he spoke of crushing isolation. "The hardest part was the holidays," he said. "Knowing you were together, probably thinking the worst of me. I nearly broke cover so many times just to let you know I hadn't abandoned you by choice." Grandpa went last, his sharing the most surprising. Beneath his stoic exterior, he'd been deeply hurt by what he perceived as his son's rejection. I blamed myself, he confessed. I thought I had pushed you away with my controlling tendencies, my inability to show proper appreciation for who you are, rather than who I wanted you to be. Dad looked stunned. I had no idea you felt that way. I always thought you were disappointed in me. I was frequently frustrated, Grandpa clarified, but never disappointed in who you are, Jackson. Only in the choices you sometimes made, like disappearing for 3 years. No, Grandpa surprised us. That choice, now that I understand it, was perhaps the most selfless thing you've ever done. I'm still angry about how it was executed, but I cannot fault your motivation. That first session broke the ice. The real work happened in the weeks that followed. Dad revealed more details. How he'd stumbled upon NextGen's discrepancies, how he'd been blocked from reporting it, and how it all connected to Blackwood's vendetta. He was obsessed with destroying you, Dad explained during one of our now regular family dinners. He blamed you for his brother's suicide 20 years ago. Robert Blackwood, Grandpa frowned. He embezzled funds and got caught. I had nothing to do with what happened afterward. In Arthur's mind, you drove his brother to it by exposing the embezzlement, Dad explained. The entire fraud scheme was partly about money, but mostly about revenge. He wanted to destroy your reputation and see you prosecuted, not just bankrupted. As Dad's physical strength returned, Grandpa surprised us both by offering him a position overseeing the Montgomery Family Foundation, the charitable arm of his empire. You've proven you have integrity and investigative skills, Grandpa said gruffly. The foundation needs someone who can ensure donations go where they're supposed to and have real impact. Dad was hesitant. Working together hasn't exactly gone well for us in the past, William. True, Grandpa acknowledged, but perhaps we've both learned something from recent events. I know I have. Dad promised to consider it, which in itself was enormous progress. Not every day brought healing. We still had arguments. During our first Thanksgiving, Dad and Grandpa fell into old patterns, culminating in Dad storming out before dessert. I found him in Grandpa's garden, staring at the stars. Some things never change, I said, sitting beside him. Some things shouldn't, he replied. Your grandfather is still the most stubborn man I've ever met. Wonder where I get it from? I nudged him. You're not exactly flexible yourself. Dad laughed softly. Fair point. We sat in silence. Then I asked the question that still bothered me. Dad, why didn't you find some way to let me know you were okay? Even just a signal that you hadn't really abandoned us. He was quiet for so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, that was my greatest mistake. I convinced myself that any contact was too risky, that the people watching me would use it to get to you. But looking back, I think part of me was afraid. Afraid of what? That you wouldn't believe me. That you'd choose your grandfather's interpretation over mine. Or worse, that you'd insist on helping and put yourself in danger. He turned to look at me directly. Underestimated you, Amada. I saw you as my little girl who needed protection, not as the strong, capable woman you've become. I'm sorry for that. His words unlocked something in me. A tight knot of hurt I hadn't fully acknowledged. I started to cry, really cry, for the first time since this whole ordeal began. I missed you so much, I managed between sobs. I thought I hadn't been enough for you to stay. Dad pulled me into a hug, his own tears falling into my hair. You were everything, Amada. You were the reason I had to see this through, no matter the cost. I just didn't realize how high that cost would be for both of us. When we finally returned to the house, Grandpa was in the kitchen, awkwardly putting together plates of pumpkin pie. I thought we might start dessert over, he offered. Perhaps with less discussion of politics this time. Dad smiled tentatively. I'd like that, William. It was a small moment, but it felt like a turning point. Not a magical resolution, but a genuine willingness to keep trying. 6 months have passed, bringing us to today. The spring sunshine streams through the windows of Grandpa's estate as I sit in the garden, reflecting on how dramatically our lives have changed since that letter arrived last fall. Dad has fully recovered, though he still sometimes wakes with nightmares that send him pacing. He accepted Grandpa's offer, bringing new transparency and purpose to the foundation. Our weekly family dinners have evolved from awkward obligations to genuinely pleasant gatherings. Last night, I actually heard Grandpa laugh at one of Dad's jokes, a sound so unexpected that both Dad and I nearly choked on our wine. My own career has flourished. With Dad's permission, I wrote a series of articles about the Blackwood fraud case, changing names and details to protect ongoing legal proceedings. The series won a prestigious journalism award, leading to job offers from national publications. But I've decided to stay in Boston for now. My family is here, finally whole again, and I'm not ready to create another separation. The legal aftermath continues. Blackwood and Senator Winters await trial. The evidence Dad gathered has been invaluable. I don't want to be defined by this case forever, he told me recently. At some point, we all need to move forward. Moving forward has meant establishing new boundaries and communication patterns. Dad and Grandpa still disagree, but they've learned to express differences without the old patterns. They found common ground in their shared commitment to protecting our family, and surprisingly, in their business instincts. For Dad, making amends has been a daily practice. He shows up consistently, calls, and makes himself available. The wooden bird carving from that first fake letter sits on my desk now. A reminder that intentions can be falsified, but actions reveal truth over time. Grandpa, too, has changed. His brush with ruin and the revelation of his son's sacrifice have softened him. He's still demanding, but he's learning to express appreciation and acknowledge other perspectives. As for me, I've had to re-examine many of my assumptions. I'd cast my grandfather as the controlling villain and my father as the victim for so long. Adjusting to a more nuanced reality has been challenging. Both men are flawed. Both have made serious mistakes. And both have shown remarkable courage and love in their own ways. This afternoon, Dad is teaching me how to carve wood in the garden workshop. It's something he tried to interest me in when I was younger, but I never had the patience. Now, watching his hands skillfully shape the cedar block, I appreciate the meditative focus it requires. You have to feel the grain of the wood, he explains, guiding my hands. Work with it, not against it. Fighting the natural direction only leads to splits and breaks. I can't help but hear the metaphor. Our family spent years working against our natural grain. I think I understand why you find this so calming, I tell him, shaving a thin curl of wood. It forces you to be present, to pay attention to what's actually there instead of what you think should be there. Dad smiles. That's exactly it. Took me years to learn that lesson, both in woodworking and in life. Later, as we show Grandpa our amateur creations over dinner, I realize how precious this ordinary moment is. Three people who nearly lost each other forever, now sharing a meal and conversation without the weight of secrets. I've been thinking about what I've learned from all this, I say, as Martha serves dessert. About family, about judgment, about truth. And what conclusions have you reached? Grandpa asks, genuinely curious. That silence doesn't always mean absence. That protecting someone and controlling them can look similar from the outside. That we can be completely wrong about the motivations behind someone's actions. I take a breath. And most importantly, that family bonds can bend almost to breaking, but still find a way to hold. Dad reaches across the table and takes my hand. Eloquently put. I'd add one more lesson, if I may. Please do. I encourage him. That sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't the one who hurt you, but yourself for the ways you may have contributed to the pain. Grandpa nods slowly. In my 73 years, I've never heard a truer statement. We sit together as the evening light fades. Three people who have traveled a difficult road to find our way back to each other. The journey isn't over. Healing rarely follows a neat, linear path, but we're moving in the right direction together. The wooden bird sits in the center of the table, a reminder of where this journey began. Dad has carved two more to match it. Three birds in flight. A family finding its way forward on newly healed wings. Have you ever discovered that a situation you completely misunderstood actually had an explanation you never could have imagined? Tell me about it in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your experiences.